If I say the cartoon whistle, will you know what I'm talking about? The cartoon whistle. I'm not talking about the one where the wolf sees the attractive lady and his eyes jump out of his head. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the Tweety Bird whistle when he doesn't want to be noticed. You know what I'm talking about? Tom and Jerry, Jerry the mouse also did this. It's where you kind of rock back and forth. You know that one? The one I'm talking about where you don't want to be noticed? That one? You may be surprised to hear this. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the movie Star Wars that came out in 1977. But, well, I was astonished to find out that at one time, Star Wars was intended to have a great deal of goofy humor inserted throughout. Apparently, there still exists footage of Han and Luke walking through the Death Star with the stormtroopers on patrol, where every time they're in front of a stormtrooper, they do the cartoon whistle. Oh, we're just rebels. We're paying no attention to us. Here to rescue Princess Leia. Apparently, there is still existing footage of that. But you're familiar. You know what I'm talking about. The cartoon whistle. That's actually what it can feel like we are doing as Christians. We sneak to our Bibles. We sneak into church. And when we're out in society, we're doing the cartoon whistle. Oh, we're just over here being Christians, paying no attention to us. We don't want to get in any trouble. We're just trying to fit in, get through our lives. And we can think and act that way, like fitting in, not being noticed, is our best bet. We're starting a whole new study today. You're here on the ground floor, the whole new study in the book of Daniel. Be looking at Daniel's life, and we're going to go all the way through it, not just the early stand up for your faith ones. We're going to go all the way through the complicated prophecy passages at the end. But today we get to look at Daniel 1, and Daniel is starting out here in a bad way. He's in a bad place. He's in a new land. He's been taken prisoner. Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of Babylon, has conquered all of Israel and Judah, and has brought them, many of the young men, as prisoners, as captives. Now, I've never been a captive, unless you count capture the flag or something like that. I've never been a real prisoner in life. Probably very few of you have been an actual prisoner. Some of you, maybe you have. But it could be difficult for us to relate to Daniel here, to know how we react in his circumstances. But before we get any further with that, let's find out what Daniel's circumstances actually are. Turn with me to Daniel chapter 1. Be starting at verse 1 and going through the entire chapter. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of good appearance, and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them in literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate and of the wine that he drank. They were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. And the chief eunuchs gave them names. Daniel he called Belteshazzar. Hananiah he called Shadrach. Mishael he called Meshach. And Azariah he called Abednego. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And he gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who assigned your food and your drink, For why should he see that you were in worse condition than the youths who are of the common age? So you would endanger my head with the king. Then Daniel said to the steward whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter, and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance and fatter in flesh than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and the wine they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. As for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. At the end of the time when the king had commanded that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king spoke with them, and among all of them, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they stood before the king. And in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were in his kingdom. And Daniel was there until the first year of King Cyrus. That's Daniel 1. One of those amazing stories that are included in Daniel. Like I said, we're going to be going through them all. But what's going on here for Daniel and his friends? Are they in a comfortable place? No. I don't know if you've ever traveled abroad, but other countries have different customs, don't they? Other places are different. You can say, I told the homeschool group one time about a friend of mine who misspoke Spanish in Costa Rica. Instead of saying, excuse me, which he thought you'd say, escúchame, that actually means listen to me. So when he ran into that poor old lady in the grocery store, he said, listen to me. Other countries have different customs, and Daniel is stuck in the middle of different customs, and he can be tempted to fit in. He's in a scary place with few friends, and he needs as many friends as he can get, right? Now is not the time to stand out or be different. Now's the time to do a cartoon whistle, right? Because standing out brings risks. What's his keeper? What's the chief eunuch? What's the caregiver? This guy with a great name, Ashpenaz. What's his concern? He's worried for his own life. What if you look lousy after you eat veggies and drink water instead of rich foods and wine? What if you look unhealthy? I'm in danger. Does Daniel have a lot of bargaining position here? He or his friends? No, they're in danger too, because Nebuchadnezzar gave clear orders, clear instructions, exactly what they were supposed to do, how their life was supposed to be shaped, what they eat, where they go, what they learn. Now is not the time to stand out. Standing out brings risks. And in our lives, being Christians, standing out brings risks as well. In a recent survey, I don't remember the exact number of people, they asked people to say what they thought about Christians. If you hear the word Christian, what first comes to your mind? And the most common answer given was, oh, those are those people that hate gays. Christians are the ones who hate gay people, right? Most common answer given in the United States of America was that Christians hate people. That we are full of hate. So that's one of the risks. If you stand up for godly truth, you're going to be often run the risk of being told that you're hateful, being seen as being hateful, and we actually run the risk of accidentally being hateful. But at the very best, we run the risk of being sidelined as weird. Very few people, if you look at the population of America, are sitting where you are right now. Very few people, the population of Cedartown and Rockmart, are sitting where you are right now. We can be sidelined as strange also. Humanity is an insecure organism. We're insecure. And what we spend our time with is looking for ways to be less different rather than more different. Now we have streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime, right? Hulu and all those. Before Netflix and Amazon Prime and the streaming services, what was the big thing? Be satellite TV. Before satellite TV, what was the big thing? Cable television. Ooh, come to Grandma's house, she's got cable. And before cable television, what was there? Anyone remember back that far? The antenna. And there were apparently different kinds of antennas. I remember my grandparents had an antenna, and you had the rabbit ears at the top of your TV, and you had to adjust them and crimp aluminum foil on the edges. I'm showing my age a little bit, but you had to do that to get the thing to work. And there were different kinds. There was UHF and VHF or something like that. And when my dad was a child, the Right Honorable Kurt Robbie, his family didn't have a lot of money. And I don't remember which type of antenna they had, but they didn't have the type that Dad wanted. Because there was an animated science fiction show, a black and white cartoon show about robots and whatever that would come on, and Dad wanted to watch it, but he didn't have the antenna to watch it, but his friends at school could watch it. They had the expensive antenna. They got to see animated robots. So my dad was feeling left out. And he didn't like to feel left out. So you know what the Right Honorable Reverend Kurt Robbie did? He pretended that he had the antenna. He pretended that he'd seen the program, that he'd seen the animated robots. And when they were talking about, oh, did you see this incredible robot battle? Did you see this or this? Dad would say, yeah, that was amazing. What a great episode. Ooh, boy. And it worked. Dad got included in the robot animated watching group until Dad got overexcited in his being one of the team, one of the gang, and started inserting his own plot line one time in conversation. Yeah, what an incredible robot battle. You remember when scientists such and such climbed into the rocket ship, and everybody looked at him. That didn't happen. You don't have that antenna, do you? You've never even seen robots go to Mars or whatever it was called. You're one of those poor people. And Dad suddenly became different again. Was an outsider, was separated. And that was a really long scripture intro, which that's our first point today. Being alone is scary. And we do things to try to avoid feeling like we're alone. But Daniel does the opposite. No cartoon whistle here. Daniel chooses a primary identity as a child of God. Verse 8, we get these exact words. He chose not to defile himself. Chose not to defile himself. Defile means to be filthy or unclean. Defile means to be saying, to fit in the wrong way. But why can't Daniel eat here? What's going on? Why can't he have delicious foods? What's going on here? Why can't Daniel eat? What's the big deal? You know that would have been the easy choice, to just shut up and eat the food. To say, yeah, I've got that antenna. Give me another helping of the ribs. That would have been easy for him to do. That's how he could have fit in. So why doesn't he eat? That's how to fit in. To be the same special as everybody else. To be the same level of special. And you guys know, we all know how to feel special, don't we? We know how to feel special, to value the things that most people value. We see what other people value, and not all of it is bad. We value strength. We value intelligence. We value money. We even value sexuality. Now, of course, it's possible to misuse strength. It's possible to misuse intelligence. It's possible to misuse money. And it's certainly possible to misuse sexuality. But even at their best, those things cannot define you. Because if they do, you're finding your identity in a created thing instead of the Creator. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Some of you may know this. You certainly did if you came to Costume Day on that particular Wednesday. except some people who thought I was just wearing pajamas. I'm a big Star Trek fan. I have been since I was 6 years old, and I love it. I think it's wonderful. I think it's one of the greatest created television programs of all time, but it is in fact a created thing. And it would be completely inappropriate for me to walk around as a pastor introducing myself as a Trekkie Christian. It would be inappropriate for me to do that. It would be inappropriate for me to put some word other than Christ ahead of Christ in my identity. And that's what Daniel is showing us. Don't identify by created things you think are special. See how special a relationship with the Creator makes you. Daniel wasn't called to identify by human creations, even by special creations, even to identify by the most powerful empire on the planet, the most powerful nation on the planet, which was Babylon. He's not called to identify as a Babylonian. That's why Nebuchadnezzar brought them there. You see who he brought? Young people, smart people, good-looking people. Physical specimens with good brains, because he wanted to rule Judah from a distance. He wanted to bring all their best young people, indoctrinate them, teach them their ways, their language, to worship their gods, and then send them home to no longer be Judeans, but to be Babylonians. So they would identify as something else. And that's why Daniel cannot eat. It goes all the way back to Leviticus 11. Where God lays out the dietary requirements for the Hebrew people. It's listed specifically. You're not supposed to eat animals with divided hooves, animals that chew the cud, so there's no pigs or rabbits or camels. But the dietary restrictions go on to types of birds, types of fish, types of bugs even. Why did God do that? Is it because those animals are evil? Some people think bugs are evil. Is that why God did that? It's because the surrounding nations, Israel and Judah were not going to be the only nations on the planet. Everybody around them was going to be watching them. They're those guys who got out of Egypt with those plagues. Let's see what they do now. Let's pay attention to them. Let's scrutinize them. And what they ate was supposed to be making a statement. What they ate, everything they do, including what they eat, is to be making a statement that they identify as God's people. And that's what Daniel and his friends decide here. That they're going to continue making that statement even though they're not back home. That they will not defile themselves, is the language. And they take it even further than the Levitical law, don't they? They refuse the wine also. All wine is not forbidden in the Hebrew dietary restrictions. So they also refuse the wine. Why? Biblical scholars actually believe that before the food was given, because they're given the king's food to eat, biblical scholars believe that before the king got the food, it was presented as an offering to their gods first, a symbolic offering to the gods. So it's the Babylonian god's food first, then the king's food, now you get to eat it after it's been blessed by the god and the king. So the food and the wine. Part of worship of foreign gods. So it's very likely that Daniel and his friends said, guess what? We're not going to be converted. We're not going to drink foreign gods' food. We're not going to eat foreign gods. We're not going to drink foreign gods' wine. We're not going to eat foreign gods' food. We're not going to be part of this system. We are still Judeans, and we still identify as God's people. That's what they say. That's what they say their identity is, and that's what matters. Now remember how hard this must be for them, because they are not at home. They don't have their own language anymore. They don't even have their same names. Their original Hebrew, chosen people of God names have been taken from them, and they get these new ones. Belteshazzar. Probably not going to see that one getting A lot of play with baby name books these days. You get a Shadrach, a Meshach, and an Abednego. Those don't really trip off the tongue, do they? Identifying as a child of God makes them feel alone, and feeling alone can be very scary. And that's our second point. Know that you are never alone when you have Christ. And that sounds like a simplistic little Sunday school slogan. And before you dismiss it as that, let's unpack just what that phrase means, that you're never alone when you belong to Christ. Daniel is a great example of standing out, of having an identity for God. He's a wonderful example, but Daniel could not identify for God perfectly. He couldn't do it. Even the very best person cannot identify as godly all the time. Cannot do it perfectly. Human strength has limits. You may know that I'm a fan of basketball, and you may also know that I believe Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player ever to play the game. I don't care how many points LeBron scores, Michael Jordan is better, in my opinion. And I remember when he retired and tried other things. He tried to be an actor and made the movie Space Jam, which that was a mistake. And then he tried to be a professional baseball player, and that didn't work out so well. And he tried to be a professional golfer, and that worked out even less well than the baseball. And then, because he couldn't sit still with all his athleticism, he came back to the game of basketball. And I was so excited, because I'd watched him win so many championships with the Chicago Bulls, and I thought, here he comes, the hero's back, basketball will be worth watching again. But he didn't come to play for the Chicago Bulls again. Who did he sign up with? The Washington Wizards. And I thought, okay, well, I guess the Washington Wizards are going to have a great season. And I was like, I don't know, he's a has-been. But I was still a fan. I said, no way. Washington Wizards are going to get the national championship this year. Just you wait, because he's the greatest basketball player ever to play the game. The Wizards did not get the championship that year. Michael Jordan was not the same player that he was before his retirement. He was still good, but he was no longer great, and Washington Wizards were not great. And they did not win, and that's a picture. It needs to be a picture of human frailty. That there is a limit to our own strength. It needs to be a picture of a perfect Daniel and the idea of a perfect Matt or a perfect you, that such a thing does not exist. There's no such thing as a perfect me. Now we need to relate to this struggle that an imperfect Daniel and his imperfect friends are having. But you may be out there saying, well, Daniel had actually an easier time, because he was raised in that chosen people of God environment. He had an entire childhood as a chosen person of God. He was raised. He knew he was a chosen person. He'd been raised to live by Old Testament law. He knew he was looking forward to a Messiah. He had every reason and excuse to identify as God's person. But recognize today that actually you have more in common with Daniel than you may believe. You have the same Redeemer, the same Messiah that Daniel was looking forward to, except you have one up on him. Your Redeemer is here. Way better than our failing abilities to live perfectly, to be completely pure. The only one who could stand out perfectly is God. So the only person who stood out perfectly was God's own Son, Jesus Christ. And he offered himself to save people. And notice this also, Jesus never conformed. Jesus never did the cartoon whistle, did he? He never said, you know, you're right, I really don't want to die. Pharisees, you're right for now. We'll let you be right today. Go ahead and misapply Scripture, that's fine. You go and be right, Pharisees. Jesus never did that. He stood up for you and was killed for continuing to identify as your Savior. And because of that, it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter how many times you failed to stand out. It doesn't matter. If you have faith in Jesus Christ, your failures are removed. And look at this. Daniel is able to, because of God's blessing, and he's able to, it says it 3 or 4 times, he's able to stand before the king. He can stand in the king's presence, fit and healthy and intelligent, full of wisdom. He can stand before the king. But guess what? That is worthless compared to being able to stand before the true king, your God and Father, the Creator. And through the work of Jesus, if you rely on Him, you have the ability, regardless of your past, to stand before God. You fit in before God. You belong before God. Receive through Christ your new identity. And then you get to be one of the chosen people, just like Daniel. Jesus spoke about that in John 17, didn't he? All those the Father had given him, trust in God, and you are one of the chosen, able to stand in God's presence. So the question has to be then, how far will we go to identify as a Christian? We aren't commanded not to eat bacon and pig meat and all these things. We don't have those requirements, but in many ways, you have the same requirements. You must be the same as Daniel and those people called to make a statement in Leviticus. Notice, where is Daniel when he chooses to live for God? He's back home, right? In his grandma's kitchen watching cable? No. He's in Babylon. He's in this place where they don't like people who identify as godly. He's far from home. He's far from home. And even though he's not in Judah, he chooses to live for God. Even though he is far away, you need to live for God even when you aren't around Christians. Even when you aren't in church. We're here at church today, right? We're on our best behavior. Most of us even took a shower today. We're here, shined and polished, ready to worship on our best behavior. But then many of us, when we leave, we begin to adapt our identity. We start to adapt it based on who we're with. And then we adapt it even further when we're alone. We start to adapt our identity. For some of us, we're unrecognizable. Don't defile yourself. Don't put any word in your identity before the name of Christ. Don't be a smart Christian. Don't be a rich Christian. Don't be a sensual Christian. Be a Christian. Because of Christ's total victory over sin, you can be filled over your sin. You can be filled with the Holy Spirit. And that means you have victory power. Power to continue to identify as a child of God. And that brings us to our concluding point today. Point number 3. To stand out for God is a secure thing. Is a blessed, secure thing. But it's not always the security we expect. It's not always the security that we expect to experience. Right after seminary, Dad got a call to be an assistant pastor at a church up in Dalton, Georgia. And Dalton's a pretty cool town then. I don't know if it still is. Carpet capital of the world. A lot of neat places to eat. I had lots of friends. Grace Presbyterian Church in Dalton, Georgia. Really cool church. Had a really neat lake. Had all kinds of fun things to do. I really liked living there and being there. We lived in a cool house up on a mountain that was full of scorpions. That's exciting. And then Dad got a call to a different church. He was called to not be an assistant pastor anymore. He was called to be a solo pastor of a church in some place called South Carolina. And 9-year-old Matt had to move. And 9-year-old Matt wasn't happy about it. I didn't want to leave my cool mountain house with that awesome view way down. I didn't mind leaving the scorpions, but it was still a cool house. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to leave my friends. I wasn't ready to leave my church. I wasn't ready to leave everything that I had known. But God sent us to a place called South Carolina. And it's not where I wanted, but God's plan is perfect. Because I was blessed to grow up in South Carolina. That's where I met my best friends. They're still my best friends for life. That's where I went to high school. That's where I went to college. That's where I met Sarah. That's where I first got plugged into ministry. Way back when. God's plan is perfect. Now, notice this is not where Daniel or his friends would choose. This isn't where they want to be. They want to be back home. But God's plan is perfect. Notice the security that Daniel needs to have. The security for him and for you needs to be being part of God's plan. Being on the same team with the one who always wins. Look how God shares the win in verse 9. Look how God shares the win. It says, favor is shown. And it continues. They stay healthy, don't they? And here's the amazing part. You say, well, of course, you eat vegetables, you're going to be healthier. You drink water, you're going to be healthier than if you drink wine. Say, yeah. But remember, this is before the vegetarian diet had been perfected. And just in case you're still saying, well, veggies, super Popeye veggies, go for it, be a sailor. Just in case you're still saying that, notice the amazing language in the Hebrew. That not only are they healthy, they are fatter. Fatter in flesh. I'm here to tell you that green beans do not make you fat. Celery is not going to make you plump up. That's not how peas work. This is not what God does here. They decide to identify as God's children. And He makes sure that that identity is known and that they are able to be recognized by those around them. That God gets 10 times the glory because they are 10 times smarter, stronger, faster, and everything else than all those other people in Babylon. Find security in that. Find security that identifying with God means your value is not in how much you make. Your value is not what other people think of you. Your value is not in your education level, not even in your physical shape. Identifying with God means your value is God. And Christ gives you that value. But it's not always the security you expect. Daniel wanted to go home. And God blessed him and his friends to be lifted up to high positions so they could continue making that statement, proclaiming their true identity. Identifying with Christ offers a whole new, unquestionable identity. That's salvation. That's freedom from sin. But remember today, freedom from sin means freedom to stand out. Many people struggle in our society. They struggle constantly with trying to figure out who they are. Trying to figure out who they are. What's this all about? How to fit in. Christ has liberated you from that sad, small, repeated circle. If you understand who Jesus is today, then when you leave from here, live differently. Let people know how great your God is. Today, when you go from this place, no matter who you are with, don't settle for fitting in. Remember, Jesus stood out for you.